What a beautiful song, Sarah. Thank you very much. And good evening, everyone. Who was here yesterday? Okay, quite a few who was not here yesterday. A few as well. So those of you who were here yesterday, I'm curious, why are you not sitting here? We had this conversation yesterday, and we're just going to do it again, just because it is important today, maybe more than yesterday, that we're all sitting here together. So please, everything is a can, nothing is a must, but if you can, please come up here, come sit together, and let's build up front here the community. I would greatly appreciate it. And while you do this, hello again to everyone. Hello to everyone online. I'm so glad that you are with us tonight to another night of Fully Alive. Thank you to the whole praise team for your beautiful music. And let me ask you all this question. Who has the little paper from yesterday if you were here? You didn't throw it away, I'm hoping. Where did you put it last night? In your Bible, very good. If you were not here yesterday, do not worry. You can, of course, obtain the paper from yesterday, I'm sure from Danilo or someone. I'm sure we have some extra ones as well. And so I invite you to look at that again. So yesterday, we talked about the blueprint for living alive. I want to bring to your attention briefly the one key sentence from yesterday. And if you remember what it is, can we do the thing where you say it with me? Maybe you remember? Is that okay? All right, so I'll start and maybe you know what I'm talking about. So, being alive is a gift. Okay, together? Being alive is a gift, but living alive is a choice, right? So that was yesterday's key sentence, and we looked at the blueprint. We looked at 3 different categories, 3 different circles. And I just want to remind you, and especially those of you who weren't here yesterday, the 3 circles. In the center core of the circle, I already just said it, we have the core, and the core consists of what? Body. Fantastic. Spirit, mind, and body. So there, the principle is, the way we are created is, first and foremost, this core, multidimensionally. And then we had a secondary circle that surrounds this core. What was that secondary circle? Not quite. The secondary circle. Very good. Connections, right? And then the third circle, I heard that already, was context. Very good. So we've got the 3 C's. So we've got core, connections, and context. And these 3 areas really make up the blueprint to learn to live your life fully alive. And so just like yesterday, there's an animal. Okay. Just like yesterday, I want to invite you. It's important to right now take a quick second. You had beautiful music already. But right now, it's important to make a decision right now to be open, to be hearing, and not to be hearing, but making decisions. And you can't do that if you don't right now take a second to get your mind into that place. So close your eyes just for a second and take 10, 15, 20 seconds and really make a decision to be open to learning about living fully alive in quiet. And the second invitation I have to give you is, of course, if you want to listen actively tonight, get yourself into a sitting position the way you can listen best, or feel free to stand anytime you like. It's socially acceptable tonight to not be sitting if you don't want to. Can anyone demonstrate from yesterday the way you should sit if you sit? Maybe look around to remember. Very good. Scoot to the edge. Nice and straight. Fantastic. Very good. Good. So now we're ready to start for tonight. And I told you yesterday that tonight we're going to dive deeper into that second circle, into the circle of connections. And this is why I needed you to come together in the center, because this is what we're talking about today. We're talking about the power of people. Did you know how much power you have as a people, as a person? We underestimate how much the people around us influence our ability to either be lifted up or to be torn down. And so tonight, I want to invite you to be really honest with yourself about the people you have chosen to allow in your presence. And I don't know about you, but I think for me, when I go to Scripture, my favorite place to go to in Scripture is always first and foremost to the story of Jesus. For me, it gives us everything we need to live fully alive. And let's look at Jesus. Go with me in the New Testament, in your mind, go to the New Testament, and go to Jesus. And I want to look at Jesus' example in terms of his connections. Maybe you've never actually studied that. Maybe you haven't purposely looked at that. But Jesus had connections, right? Human connections. All right, let's think about the connections he had from when he was born. Okay, so when you are born, who are your immediate connections? Yeah, your family. And let's remember, some of us have our biological family around us, some of us have a family of choice around us, right? Even from the very beginning. But there is a family of sorts that's around us. And then this circle expands. And think about the story. We don't know much about the upbringing of Jesus. We have little bits and pieces. But do you remember when he was quite young and he sort of went astray during an event? And where did his parents find him? In the temple. And what was he doing? He was teaching, but he was with people, right? I would say Jesus was a people person. Would you agree? At the end of the day, that's his calling. But I'm a lot more interested in looking at Jesus in his adult life, because now he developed, he grew up, and as he started his ministry, something very interesting happened when we look at the connections of Jesus. And let's see if this clicker situation is working today. This is on. It is on. That doesn't want to. Oh, you're doing it again. There you go. We do this thing. I think that works well. Okay, so if we look at Jesus, we can learn some really important lessons about how he structured his connections. Jesus had an inner circle. I have a question for you. Do you currently have an inner circle of people? We're going to go deeper into that in just a minute. But Jesus had an inner circle. Who am I talking about? Who was his inner circle? Not quite. But good idea. He said there's 12 disciples. We'll get there, but that wasn't his inner circle. Peter, James, and John, right? He had a few people that he was especially close to, that he trusted maybe even more than the rest of the disciples in terms of his interactions. Who went with him when he prayed in the garden? Okay, so Jesus had clearly an inner circle of people. He said, what did he say about John? What does Scripture say? It's the one he loved, right? So Jesus had an inner circle. It's so interesting to me, the story in the garden, it's fascinated me because he asked an inner circle of people to come with him, and what did he ask them to do? To not just stay up and pray. Why? Because we see in this garden the human side of Jesus struggling. And he asked his inner circle to support him, to be there, to pray with him, to help him through the difficult time. And I think that is so interesting to see how Jesus even gives us there some clues about how he built his connections. Now, Jesus also had a circle of good friends and family. Now we come to his disciples, right? So he had a closer group of friends, and he also had family, right? We see that from time to time in Scripture. So he had that circle as well that he kept with him. Trying to get that working. All right, very good. Thank you so much. And what I find also interesting is looking at Jesus, the lessons we can learn from him is, anytime Jesus interacts with human beings, we see how he interacts, how he connects with people. He connects with people lovingly, respectfully, he's kind, and yet he's also very clear and honest the way he interacts with people, right? Would you agree? I can't really see you, so you need to say something. So, yeah? Okay, very good. So we have those lessons from Jesus that I find interesting about how he has human connections in life. And I want to look at a secondary example before we dive a little deeper into your connections. We also have some lessons from the blue zones. Can you raise your hand if you know the blue zones? Does anybody know what that is? Okay, a few people have heard of it. So blue zones is still today one of the largest projects worldwide to evaluate the areas on this planet where people live the longest. Okay, so where most people, or it's very normal there, that people turn 100 or older, and the study of those communities have revealed certain things about living fully alive. That's why the blue zones are so interesting to this topic. So if you've never looked at that, look at that. In fact, there's a documentary on Netflix out on the blue zones right now, okay? But when you look at the blue zones, one of the most interesting things that the blue zone study showed us is, and maybe you have never thought about that this could be it, but the social connections in the blue zones had the most and the highest impact on longevity. The social connections, more than what they ate or anything else. So social connections clearly have an impact on longevity, but also on your quality of life. And you know what's interesting about us as human beings, we talked about this yesterday, we know a lot, but the turning it into action is the harder part, right? We already established that yesterday. And it's interesting because oftentimes we are not intentional about our connections. We just kind of go along with the flow, the people that happen to be around, right? And we're not intentional about selecting them. It's so interesting. When you look back at Jesus, Jesus did choose his disciples, no? There's a reason behind it. And so other lessons that we learned from the blue zones in terms of connections that I found that interesting is, number one, in all the blue zones where people live the longest and the happiest is that they had a supportive family community. So the people that they were close with was their family. And I want to, if it's okay, I will go into a subject that might be painful for some of us. I told you yesterday, I'm a child of divorce. I come from a broken home. Maybe you do too, or maybe you know people who do. Sometimes family is not a happy thing when things happen at home. And I have learned over time that if your family that you were born in is not bringing joy, or maybe doesn't even exist anymore, or they're not here anymore, or whatever the situation may be, you can always have a family of choice, always. So when I use the word family, I say that very intentional. It might be your biological family, or it might be your family of choice. And it's a beautiful thing that we can have that too. But in the blue zones, people had supportive family communities. And you know what else? And I love this part. In all blue zones, the aging parents stayed close to their kids, where the kids started to take care of their parents. That's rare today, isn't it? But something to be learned from that they stayed close. They took care of their parents personally. They were there. They cared for them. The second thing about the lessons from the blue zones is that those people were all somehow connected to a faith-based community. So a community that shared something deeper, a purpose in life. And the lessons from the Blue Zone say that those people found their right tribe. So their inner circle, their people. In fact, and I thought this was so fun, in Okinawa, which is one of the Blue Zones in Japan, there's a thing called moai. Have you heard that before? Do you know what a moai is? In that culture, people choose purposefully 5 people to be their moai. And their moai is their tribe, and they commit to each other for life to support each other in every possible way, including financially. If someone in your moai goes through a financial problem, the rest of the moai supports them. And they're not necessarily mother or father in the moai. Those are chosen people. When I saw that, I thought that was so cool to see that this is actually part of that culture. Moai, remember that word, okay? So, the fact of the matter is that the people that surround us influence 3 key things. Number 1, the people that surround us influence our behavior, they influence our attitudes, and they influence our results in anything that we do. So now go with me on this journey for a second, okay? I tried to illustrate that. When you're with your friends, whoever your friends are, whoever your people are, and everyone is on this thing, it's like, oh, we're going to eat pizza. And 4 of the 5 people want to eat pizza, and that 5th person isn't sure. What is that 5th person going to do? They're going to eat pizza. That is human behavior. So we always will engage in the behaviors of the people that surround us, good or bad. Because it takes a ton of mental energy to go another way if your surrounding always does a thing. Okay? Let's say there's 5 people, and 4 out of the 5 people are all about sitting down together and playing worship music. The 5th person is unlikely going to say, let's go to the movies. Do you see what I'm saying? There is power in people and your surroundings. And we are very, very, I said earlier, unintentional. I'd like to even say very sloppy related to our social health. Our attitudes. Okay, so think about this for me. When you go into your classroom or into your workplace or wherever you go every single day, you will copy whatever the atmosphere is going to be. Do you know what I'm talking about? You come into, okay, so let's pretend you all have a job in some office, and there's a whole bunch of people working in the office, and you come a little late. Everyone is already there. And you come in, and you realize everyone sort of has a really sad face. You're not going to jump in once you see that and say, how's it going? You adjust to the mood in the room, because that's what we do as humans. We copy all the time. So what that means is, if you're around happy people, you are more likely to be happy. If you're around complaining people, you're more likely to gonna be a complainer. If you're around people who care about fitness, you're probably gonna get fitter. Are you following this? This seems so obvious, but we're not building our lives that way. I don't know if you've heard this before, maybe you have. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You've heard this before? Okay, we're gonna do an activity right now. Think about it right now. Who are the 5 people right now you're spending the most time with? Who do you spend the most time with? And I'm talking about live or maybe on social media. I don't know how your life looks like, but who are the 5 people that you're spending the most time with? Write them down somewhere. Write them down. Put down the names of the 5 people you're spending the most time with. Do you all have an answer? Like you all can think of the 5 people? Okay, now I want you to think about those people. I want you to think about those people, and I want you to think about yesterday's presentation about the different behaviors we know are good for you to live fully alive. Now I want you to think about those 5 people and those behaviors. Now I want to see what kind of connections you're building. Like, what are they like? What do they do? What are their attitudes? How do they spend their time? What's their hobbies, right? So think about that. What kind of people are you hanging out with? I hear noises in the audience. All right. Okay, now are you ready to be a little bit critical? Like more, can you be self-critical for a second? I need an answer, guys. Yes. Okay, good. So, different thought now. Leave the rest parked. We've done until now. New thought, blank sheet. What is your goal in life? What do you want to achieve in life? What's your calling? Where do you want to go? Do you have anything on that paper already? Yeah? Do you have got something there? Okay. Now think about your goal, where you want to be, what you want to do, and now think about your 5 people that you're hanging out with. Are those 5 people that are going to support you reaching that goal because they think like that, they support you in that, they're aware of that? Is there a good connection between the 2 things? Are you understanding what I'm saying? I'll make another example. So for example, you have a calling to be a speaker, maybe within the context of ministry. You're called to be a pastor. There's a few people here, no? That are called to the ministry? We're all called to ministry, by the way. All right. But so anyways, you're called, and when you close your eyes, your goal is you want to move a lot of people, and you want to create great projects to move people's lives and so on. And then the 5 people that you're hanging out with are really passionate about IT. There's nothing wrong with that. But the way the IT people will think about their goals and what they're going to do is very different about what you're going to do. Does that mean you can't be nice to them or be friends? Of course you can be. But the question is, should that be your tribe, the people that are going to bring you to where you're going to go? And I'm going into waters now where people are like, wait a minute. I can't just cut off people. You don't need to cut off anybody. You just need to start thinking about who are you going to spend your most time with. Okay? So think about that some more. Keep that thought in your mind. The 5 people we spent the most time with, they determine which conversations dominate our attention. Right? I will tell you an example. The last 3 years have been crazy in this world. I think you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of stuff going on. And if you watch the news, it will dominate a lot of negative stuff that's happening. And I noticed that I made a conscious choice not to watch a lot of news, and the people I hung out with also weren't focused on watching a lot of news. And I noticed whenever I started to talk to people that watched a lot of news, the conversations were about a lot of the stuff in the news. And the stuff in the news is not positive. I mean, I don't know what news are watching, but generally they're not positive, okay? That doesn't mean you need to be ignorant to what's happening in the world. That's a different story. But what's dominating your mindset? I started talking to people that watched news more and more and more and started reading articles, and you know what happened? The fear in them just became bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where there were people that just locked themselves up and they did not want to have any more social interaction with any other human being. I'm not condemning that. I'm simply saying that whatever we spend time with dominates our attention. I asked you yesterday, what are you letting into your mind? Because it has a control over how well you're doing, right? And if we're in a social circle that talk about subject X, whatever it is, doesn't matter, it's going to dominate your attention. And if you want your attention to be dominated by good things, you need to be in circles of people that talk about good things. Very simple. It is also a fact that the people you spend the most time with affect your attitude and your behaviors. I just mentioned the example with the pizza eating, right? But also the attitudes toward whatever. I'll just say this example, okay? Most of you are students here, or many of you are students, right? There's students here? Yes, okay. All right, so let's pretend you had a class you really didn't like. That never happens in college. But if you have a class you really don't like, for whatever the reason is, and you start talking to your classmates, and all you are talking about is, oh, I don't like this class, and I hate it, da, 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 then you start talking about it all the time, right? And it dominates your attitude because everybody has that attitude around you. So we have to be quite careful about who our immediate circle of people are, because they have way more influence over your well-being, your thinking, and your existence than you probably ever thought about. I think this is actually scary. It's also a fact that you're going to start thinking like the people that you're hanging out with. I mean, you adjust. Are there married people here today? There's some married people. I know a couple married people here. You know, I mean, maybe you can attest to that. But when you live with your spouse for a while, you start molding, right? You start adopting what the other person is doing, and you find your groove, right? Because we adapt to the people that we're with. You know, it's a funny thing is usually, or often this happens, when people get married, let's say the wife doesn't like tomatoes and the husband likes tomatoes a lot. There's a really good chance at some point the wife's going to start liking tomatoes, okay? It's because that's how we work. And so it's also the way we think. We often just adapt because of what we hear, we change our thinking. I don't know if you've heard about the compound effect. Social psychologist Dr. David McClelland from Harvard spent time studying the subject, and he determined in his clinical studies that people you habitually associate with determine as much as 95% of your success or failure in life. That's huge. Let that sink in for a moment. So there's power in the people. And I know that we all like to be the person that says, I am strong. If everyone eats pizza, I won't. There's maybe a few that can do that, right? But it's not how we work. There is this compound effect. You cannot hang out with negative people and expect to live fully alive. It's not possible. I'm not judging negative people, because remember, we all have choices we get to make. But I get to choose who I spend my time with. Jesus chose who he spent his time with. That didn't mean he didn't interact with other people. He just chose who he spent his time with. And my question to you is on this subject. Are you ready to really live fully alive? We have the core, and then we have the connections. And I have some shocking news for you. You could live incredibly healthfully. You could do your daily devotions, have a great spiritual life. You could eat healthy and exercise. And you could do all those things. And if you have a crappy social circle, you cannot live fully alive. Because it has an impact on your overall well-being. Okay? That's why everything works in unison with each other when we talk about well-being. You know, go back to the New Testament with me, and we talked about how we have glimpses into the life of Jesus. Glimpses, right? And I think it was beautiful to see that his small inner circle, and of course we said earlier Peter, James, and John, but we know there's probably a couple more people in his inner circle, right? A couple of ladies were in the inner circle as well. Okay? When he died on the cross, who was there? Inner circle people. Okay? The inner circle people are people who are, and this is important, inner circle people are not people who do what you want. Inner circle people are people who are sincerely interested in your well-being, and that sometimes means they have to confront you to make you see the things that are doing terribly. People that are willing to tell you the truth in what they see and still love you. That's an inner circle. People who are loyal, who are committed. People who don't run away when things get hard. People who are willing to have hard conversations with you. The inner circle are circle people that you can call up anytime and know they will be there if you need them. Not to rob a bank, but to do good things. Okay? I want to tell you another personal example because for me it has been a journey, like I told you yesterday, a journey to start understanding whom I need to remove from my circle of people. I eventually got to the point where one of my best friends, a wonderful, amazing girl, she had a huge impact in my life. Her and her husband, they really took care of me when times were tough because they're part of my inner circle and they really cared for me. And as I learned my lessons in life, I came to the understanding that being the inner circle does not mean you have to cover up the bad things your friends are doing. That is not the inner circle. And I said to my best friend, I said to her, listen, I want this to be forever what we have here, but I will tell you right now, if you ever decide to betray your husband or lie to your husband, I will talk to your husband. I will not cover up for you. And I'm giving you this specific example just to illustrate the point. What does that mean to be an inner circle and have an inner circle of people? But when you have one like that, it elevates your life significantly. It adds joy to your life because you start sharing things in life with people. And for the married people or those that are going to be or in relationships or whatever, it's really important to understand that one other person cannot be everything for you. You need a social circle beyond your partner. You need variety in that circle, people with different skills and strength and perspectives. Okay? And so tonight, I want to take the time to dive into more specifically of how you can walk out tonight with some clarity about the power of people in your life right now and where you want to make changes, just like last night. And so we've got another handout tonight. I don't know if someone can help me with that. But as you're waiting for that, maybe organize some pens already so that way you can use pens, maybe share some pens. There's some up here I see, fantastic. And we're going to do this together today. I'm not going to say do this on your own. We're going to go through this together. When I first did these exercises, it changed everything for me in terms of how I wanted to start living fully alive in this area. As you're waiting for the paper, you can already brainstorm with me on the first question. We already just did it, and I'm going to split that up a little bit. So the first question is, who are the 3 to 5 people in each category on the top of the paper that you spend the most time with? So right now, think about your partner or family, like just in that category, not friends. Partner or family, who are you spending your most time with? 3 to 5 people in the category of partner and family, and write it into that first column, like who that is. Everybody got it? Okay, so first category, 3 to 5 people you're spending the most time with in your circle of family and partner. Maybe cousin Gina or Uncle John, sister, brother. You guys have papers? Hey. Very good. Okay, we're going to move through this paper, so try to do it quite quickly. So the second category is friends. So who are the 3 to 5 people in your circle of friends you're spending the most time with? So first we got family, then we've got friends. Bless you. All right, and then we've got the third category. Teachers, co-workers, or other groupings that you're involved with. Maybe choir, maybe sports team, maybe I don't know what you do. But 3 to 5 people that are not considered your family or friends you're spending the most time with. Maybe colleagues in your classroom that are not really your friends, but you're spending time with them. People who work here, who have jobs, you often spend the most time with people that are not your friends. They're your co-workers. So who are they? Raise your hand if you got something in each category. Not yet? Okay. Take another minute. See if you can come up with the names. All right, put the paper down for a second. Don't worry, just put it down. You can finish that later. I want to switch gears thinking. So now we talked about who we spend the most time with, okay? Now I want to go to the next category. Now we want to think about people who actually have the most influence on you. Now, we know people that you spend time with have influence on you, but there might be people that maybe have a big influence on you. And that's the second one down on your paper. And there's 3 categories. The first category is maybe in the category of mentors, teachers, bosses, or pastors. People who have influence in one way or another. So who are the 3 to 5 people in that category that right now have the most influence on you? On how you think, on your faith, on your outlook on life. By the way, they don't have to be people you necessarily know in person. You could be listening to Pastor so-and-so 5 times a week, and that person is influencing you, but they don't even know you. But they could be influencing you, right? And the next category I think is really interesting. People on social media, accounts you follow. So who is influencing you on social media? Like what are the accounts that you follow and they pop up always as the first thing and you look at their reels, you look at whatever they're posting. And it's, by the way, it's okay if you can't think of one there, but keep it in mind and really brainstorm and start paying attention to it because you'll start realizing it once you actually look at this more specifically. And then the third category about influences in your circle of family and friends. Who are the ones that have the most influence on you for whatever reason? And if you can't think of 3, that's fine. You could have 1 or 2. Okay, you can stop there. Again, you can fill out the list later on again if you want to add more names to it. But now comes, in my opinion, the funnest part. The funnest part is that you can now craft your social circle. You can make adjustments to your social circles. And at the bottom of the paper, you see again 3 circles. In the middle, you see the small circle. This is going to be your inner circle. Who should belong to your inner circle? Like I said, those are the people that are your people, that are loyal. You're moai. You remember that word? I said that earlier. You're moai. Who should be that? People that you want in that for all the different reasons and criteria that you want them there. Who's your moai? I want to tell you a quick story. My mama is going to turn 80 this next year. And I know she is the fittest 80-year-old lady I know. That woman, she like, we have this thing. I bought her, she wanted a tracker of sorts. So I bought her a tracker. And literally, she'll write me and go, she'll say, today, I walked 20,000 steps. What about you? And so she has a competition with me going on, which is really hilarious, and she beats me frequently. But anyways, it's so interesting. My mom had a hard life. My mom was the youngest of 5 children. My mom was born in 1944. That was the last year of the war. And my mom was not born because the parents had a plan for her to be born. She was just born. Her mom, my grandma, was already quite old, and so when my mom was born, my grandma was fleeing from the Russians. And they were somewhere in a little place, today Poland, back then nobody knew where it belonged to. And when my mom was born, she was fleeing with her mom, my grandma, and 3 of her older siblings. Her oldest sister at the time was in a wheelchair because she had multiple sclerosis. So my grandma was fleeing with a daughter in a wheelchair, pregnant, and 2 other kids in between. And when she was born on the side of a road in an abandoned schoolhouse. And after she was born, my grandma didn't produce milk. And back then, you couldn't go to the store and buy milk. That was not possible, obviously. Anyway, long story short, my mom survived. It was a very, very bad winter in April of 44. And I say this as it's not meant to be funny. It is a little bit funny, but my mom was born on April 20th. Some people that know history know why that's funny. But that was Hitler's birthday. Okay, so she was born in 44. And my grandma tried to keep my mom alive by melting snow and putting sugar in it. And my mom survived on that. So my mom had a hard life because she was the one that had to take care of her older sister having multiple sclerosis, and she watched her die. And she was always sort of the fifth wheel. She literally was the fifth wheel. And all of her siblings back then were very upset that she was born because that meant less food for everybody else. So it was a hard life. But my mom is a fighter, and so she went through life fighting, always fighting. And one thing, what you do when you live in this type of situation where you feel like your family is not quite happy that you're around, you start finding your family of choice. You always know, I find other people that I need to have around, good people. And it was so cute because a couple of weeks ago, my mom was visiting me, and we were watching this Netflix Blue Zones documentary together. And they were talking about the Okinawans and their moais. And my mom, nearly 80 years old, looks at me, she goes, I got a moai. I said, I know, Mom, that's why you're living a good life, because you have chosen people that are good people that you can trust, that are with you, that are not your family, but people you chose. Literally, her moai consists of 3 other people, 86, 87, and 85. And those 4 people, literally, they bike together, they walk together. Every single week, they pick a town in Germany all day long to bring people books about Jesus. Every week. And they do it together. Then they meet up, and then they have coffee and cake like the Germans do afterwards. They do a thing. Right now, those 4 people are together on vacation for 2 weeks at our health. We have a place in Germany that's an Adventist health getaway thing, and that's where they go, and they do treatments and massage and whatever, and it's hilarious because when she's there, she like sometimes says hello, but she's busy. And my mom is a huge example of what I understood why Moais are so important, because if she didn't have that circle of people, her health would be way worse than it is right now. Her outlook on life would be way worse. But she has meaningful relationships that keep her alive. So I'm really thankful that she taught me that, and I can still learn from her right now. And I've been thinking about this recently too. Your moai is allowed to change as you go through life, yeah? You can make adjustments. Because maybe sometimes people go different ways, and that is the way life goes. But find your moai and be intentional about it. And then find additional people that are good for you, that are good influences, and start eliminating the things that you know are not good for you because they're not in line with your goals and your calling. And you have all the control over it, by the way. Of course, I prefer that tomorrow you're not going to start calling people and like, okay, you're no longer in my social circle of people, bye, right? That's not maybe the smart way to go about it, but start thinking about more consciously and start making adjustments. Now here comes the next part. Start thinking about who are the people that are actually like I really want to be. Who are my examples? Who are people that I strive to be like? Connect with those people intentionally. Call them. Because I can tell you now, because I've been in a role of being a mentor, that there's nothing more beautiful than people calling and being like, can I spend time with you because I want to learn from you, and it's a privilege to give back. So call them. I don't care how famous they are. Call them. Contact them. And that's my last story to that. Do you have a favorite singer somewhere in the world? Maybe? Favorite band? I love music. And one of my favorite artists is a Christian artist. Most of you do not know her. I'm pretty sure most of you don't. Her name is Sarah Kelly. And Sarah Kelly started becoming more known in the United States over 20 years ago. And I was in LA at some Christian event. I don't even remember what it was. And she was featured on stage. And she told her story. And do you know those moments you go somewhere and you hear, and you're like, this is my person. She doesn't know that yet, but she's my person. And so she told her story, and she started playing the music, and it was my music. Her and I, we just connected. Well, I connected with her. She didn't connect with me, but I with her. And I bought every single thing she released in music, right? I didn't know then that her songs continued to be about the struggles in her life, which then turned out to be the struggles I went through. So interestingly enough, she mentored me through her music, through my struggles. I don't know if you've experienced something like that. And I told you guys yesterday a little bit, but a big story, or a part of my story, is that I survived a very abusive relationship for a long time. That was her struggle too. In fact, she too was married to a pastor. I also was married to a pastor. And after I overcame my struggles and I was released and God helped me to be free from that, I felt a calling. I felt a calling to help other people to become free of bad situations. And so I found other women that had gone through the same thing, and together we formed a movement. It was called Rise Up Against Abuse. It was a few years ago. And we decided to plan a big rally. It was held at Andrews University, but we planned a big rally. And we brought people from all over the States. And we sat together in the planning meeting, and somebody said, we need a musician for this event. And my head right away goes, it has to be Sarah Kelly. So I thought, well, how do I even get in touch with her? Because now she had been nominated for 2 Grammys. She was known. I mean, she recorded with very famous musicians. And so what does someone like me do? I have no idea how to contact this person. How do I contact this person? So I go on Facebook, look at her official site, and somewhere in the small print it said, to inquire about booking her, contact her agency, blah, 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 whatever it says. I thought, well, okay, I'll try. I sent an email to some random agency, and what was my expectation? I'm never going to ever hear anything. That was my expectation. So I sent this email, and I said, we are planning this event, and this is shortly my story, and we would love nothing more than Sarah to come to our event and tell her story and do the music. And I waited a few days, and after a few days, I got a text message, like an iMessage, from Sarah Kelly. And I thought, this must be a joke, because, like, why would you? And she said, hey, Dominique, my team sent me your message, and it moved me deeply, what you wrote us. And I really would like to connect with you. You can imagine what happened in my house. I flipped out. This is my favorite musician for 20 years, and now she's writing me a message. She wants to connect with me. And so we connected. And we connected more than I ever thought we would, because we started sharing our stories, and they were almost identical. And she says, you know, it's not a coincidence that our paths are crossing. And long story short, Sarah came to our event, and she played, and she told her story. And it was a beautiful example of what I was trying to tell you here. Don't be afraid to connect with the people that inspire you. Connect with the people that move you. Connect with the people that have a good influence that you can move big things with. And I'm very humbled by it that we're now friends, but obviously Sarah is just Sarah, a person just like anyone else. And we have done some projects together, and she has decided to change lives and impact lives. And so I want to encourage you tonight. I want to encourage you to start thinking about if you really want to live fully alive. Because if you do, then you need to reevaluate your connections. And go to Scripture later, read about the story of Jesus, and let Him inspire you. Pray about your current connections. Pray about, is this a person I should stay connected with? And those that ask will get answers. So take this seriously. Take the secondary paper today and create your circles. And by the way, just because they're family on paper does not mean they have to stay in your circles of connections. I say that to all those people that are maybe caught in very difficult circumstances. You're not qualified to be in someone's circle just because you have the title of uncle. Okay? That's important. And I hope, and maybe that's a good segue, and you see it on the screen, please do connect with me. I'm happy to be connected with you. I love having personal conversations. So connect with me on Instagram so we can connect if you want to.